Welcome to Learn English Journey. The sun was barely rising when the sound of the kettle broke the silence of a small house near the coast of Bristol. Inside, a woman sat by the window, watching the morning mist fade over the sea. Her eyes were tired but kind, eyes that had seen both joy and loss. That woman was Margaret Collins, and this was the morning her quiet life would take an unexpected turn. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, from which country and city are you watching this story? We love hearing from you and seeing our community from all around the world. Margaret was 62 years old. She had lived alone for almost a decade, ever since her husband passed away peacefully one cold winter night. Their home, though small, still carried traces of his presence. An old fishing hat by the door, a cracked photograph on the mantel, and the faint smell of his favorite cologne that seemed to linger in the air. Her son, Andrew, had left England more than 15 years ago. He had moved to Australia in search of better opportunities, and there he built a new life, a stable job, a beautiful wife, and 2 children who barely knew their grandmother beyond a few phone calls. Margaret often imagined them playing in the garden under the southern sun, their laughter echoing through a world far away from hers. Every morning, her life followed a predictable rhythm. She woke up early, opened the curtains, and stood by the window for a moment, just watching the street, as if waiting for something or someone. Then she made herself breakfast, tidied the house, and spent the rest of the day surrounded by memories. In the evenings, the silence grew heavier. The ticking clock became the only sound that reminded her time was still moving. Sometimes Andrew called, his voice warm yet distant. "Soon, Mum," he would say. "I'll come visit soon." But soon never came. Still she waited, because mothers never stop believing in the word soon. Margaret kept Andrew's old photos in a small wooden box beside her bed. She would open it every night, running her fingers gently over the worn edges, remembering his smile as a boy. Those memories were her comfort, her connection to a time when the house was filled with laughter instead of echoes. Then one gray afternoon, everything changed. A soft knock echoed through the hallway. Surprised, Margaret wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. There he was, Andrew, standing right in front of her after so many years. His smile was warm, but there was something different in his eyes, something she couldn't quite understand. "Andrew, you really came?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded, stepping closer. "Of course, Mum. I missed you." Tears filled her eyes as she wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in years, she felt alive again. She led him inside, made tea, and they sat together, talking, laughing, remembering. She asked about Emily, his wife, and about the children. He said they were all fine, happy, healthy. Then she asked, "Why now, my dear? What made you come back after all this time?" He hesitated for a moment before answering softly, "I've been thinking about you. You live here all alone. It's not safe anymore. I want to take you to Australia. You'll be with us. You'll have family again." Margaret looked down at her hands, silent. Her heart ached with both joy and doubt. "This house, it's my life," she whispered. "Your father and I built everything here. I don't know if I can leave it behind." Andrew smiled, though his eyes grew serious. "Mum, the house is old. It's falling apart. In Australia, you'll have your own room. You'll see the kids every day. Please come with me. Emily would love to have you there." That night, Margaret didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the lights flicker across the harbor, torn between love and fear. Could she really abandon everything familiar? But Andrew was her only son, the only piece of her family left. By morning, her heart had made the choice her mind resisted. When Andrew suggested selling the house, he said gently, "You don't need it anymore, Mum. You'll live with us. You can use the money to start fresh." He smiled, a reassuring smile, and she wanted to believe it. So she said yes. She sold the house, packed her memories into one small suitcase, and together they drove to the airport. Margaret felt both anxious and hopeful, sad to leave her past, yet eager to step into a future that promised closeness. At the airport, the crowd buzzed with noise and motion. Andrew turned to her and said, "Mum, wait here for a moment. I'll get a wheelchair. The walk is long, and I don't want you to get tired. I'll be back in 5 minutes." She nodded and sat down near the glass window, watching the planes take off one after another. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 30. Andrew didn't come back. She told herself he was stuck in line, that he'd appear any moment with a warm smile in the chair he promised. But minutes became hours. People came and went, families reunited, and still, no sign of her son. Her heart began to race. Fear crept in. She looked at every face that passed, searching for the one she loved most, but he was gone. A police officer noticed her sitting alone and approached gently. "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" "Yes," she said. "My son. He went to get a wheelchair. We're flying to Australia together." The officer frowned. "Do you have his photo?" She took out an old picture of Andrew from her bag and showed him her ticket. He nodded kindly and said, "Please wait here. I'll check." Margaret waited. The airport lights flickered above her as time seemed to stand still. When the officer returned, his expression had changed. He sat beside her and spoke softly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Your son boarded the flight. He's already gone. He left alone." For a moment, everything stopped. She stared blankly, her lips trembling. "No, you must be mistaken. My son would never leave me. He loves me." The officer's voice was gentle. "I saw him, ma'am. He gave his passport and boarded the plane by himself." Tears filled her eyes. The world blurred around her. She whispered, "My son," and began to cry quietly. The officer's eyes grew misty too. "Some people forget their hearts," he said. "I'm truly sorry." He introduced himself as Officer James Turner, explaining that he couldn't leave her there alone. "You remind me of my own mother," he said softly. "She passed away years ago. Please come with me. You'll get sick if you stay here." At first she refused, but his kindness broke through her pain. He called his wife Clara, who immediately agreed to welcome her. That night, Margaret stayed in their home. Clara cooked dinner and spoke to her as if she were family. Margaret cried quietly in her room, grieving not only her house, but the love she thought she still had. Yet in the warmth of those strangers, she found something she hadn't felt in years: care, compassion, belonging. The next morning, James received a phone call that made his face turn pale. He stepped into another room, whispering. When he returned, he said nothing, only smiled faintly. What Margaret didn't know was that the flight her son took had never reached Australia. There were no survivors. James kept the truth to himself. He knew her heart was already broken. No words could make it right. So instead, he protected her. He cared for her as if she were his own mother. Days turned into months. James helped her visit doctors, bought her medicine, and treated her with tenderness. Clara respected her deeply. Their house became her new home. Margaret never stopped praying for Andrew's soul, for the grandchildren she never met, and for every mother who waited for someone who would never return. One day, James asked softly, "Do you ever think about going back to your old house?" She smiled faintly. "I lost that house," she said, "but I found a home here." Andrew was gone, but in losing him, she found something unexpected, a son who truly cared. Months passed, and seasons changed. Margaret began to smile again. She planted flowers in the small garden behind James and Clara's house, daisies, lavender, and tiny roses that reminded her of the garden she once had by the sea. Every morning, she would sit by them, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. It was a different life, a quieter one, but it was filled with something she thought she had lost forever: peace. Sometimes she still dreamed of Andrew. In those dreams, he was a little boy again, running through the garden, his laughter echoing in the wind. She would wake up with tears in her eyes, whispering a prayer for his soul. Though she didn't know the truth about what had happened to him, in her heart, she had already forgiven everything. Love had taken the place of pain. James and Clara treated her like family. On weekends, they invited neighbors for tea, and everyone called her Grandma Margaret. She began to laugh again, to share stories about her youth, and to teach Clara how to make the old soup recipe her husband used to love. Slowly, the emptiness inside her started to fade. One evening, as the sky turned orange, James sat beside her on the porch. He said softly, "You know, you've changed this house. It feels warmer now." Margaret smiled. "That's because love always finds a way," she said. "Even when we lose everything, love can still rebuild a home." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of birds filled the quiet air. In that silence, there was peace, the kind of peace that comes after storms, after tears, after heartbreak. Margaret no longer waited for someone to come back. She had already been found. And maybe that's the greatest mystery of life. Sometimes the people who hurt us lead us to the ones who will truly love us. Sometimes what feels like the end is only the beginning of a different kind of grace. She looked up at the darkening sky and whispered a final prayer. "Thank you for giving me a new home and a new son." Her story reminds us that even in the moments of deepest loss, kindness can find us when we least expect it. What would you do if you were in Margaret's place? Would you be able to forgive and love again? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Learn English Journey for more stories like this one. Stories about life, love, and the power of second chances.